Right, Sam. Yeah, so I put on Schoology on the calendar the assignments for the coming 2 chapters. I just discovered this about Schoology. I don't know how it's going to actually look when we get there. Notice it says Monday the 29th, but then it says the 29th to March 2, right? And so this is, yeah, so I just hope this is still here after the 29th, because they tend to disappear after, I think, 2 days or 1 day or something. So so we'll see. But in any case, this is just an advanced map so that you can know where you fit in the slot. Now, keep giving your attention here, because with the Cultural Convention and God knows what other types of absence things coming up, tell me if you are going to be absent next week for Cultural Convention. Matthew? Who else? Anybody else going to Cultural Convention?
I'm an alternate, so maybe.
Okay. All right. So now, Matthew, let's see where you are here. You are. Oh. All right, Alana, you're confusing me.
Yeah, I'm jumping around everywhere.
Yeah, you are. It makes it hard to go by seat order. People are taking your seats. Is that Maddie? Is Maddie this? I knew she was evil when she walked in. All right. Okay, actually then, Nicholas, I'm gonna. Where's Nicholas? I'm gonna. Okay, you're all messing with me. That's what you're doing. Let's just mess with. We know he has a seat order, so let's sit in different seats. Nicholas, I'm going to switch you and Bloody Matthew right now. That's right, not Bloody Mary, but Bloody Matthew. Okay, so Matthew, this assures that you will be going next class.
Okay. Very happy.
Okay. Now I get to do this business again.
I wanted to try and and then remove like 15. Well, I want to do no Turks.
Come on, you piece of crap. Come on, you piece of crap. There you go.
And you go on like Reddit and see like Brazilians and secrets fighting each other.
Okay, so now, please give me your attention. That means be quiet. Oh, how do I hate thee? Let me count the way. All right, this. So this is chapter 19. It's coming up. So I'm doing chapter 18 today, and then here's chapter 19. So that will be Monday. So there's only one. Oh, it's not a wrinkle here. So notice, as we discussed last time with the combined themes, 3 and 1, that'll be you, Ryan. Payne, 4 plus Tech, Rabia, you, 2 and 5, Matthew, and so forth. So Arjun, Nicholas, Sam. Ottomans, Chinese, Russia, Japan. Okay? We cannot know exactly which days will be which, because that really depends on the pace and everything, right? And so that is just be prepared for it, right? And then the following one is the last of period 5. And after this, we will have a period 5 exam. So this I want to point out. So Tehran, Ali, and Alice, hear this. Because the imperialism, so I'll just start up here. I'm going to start and end, because these are both conceptual types of imperialism, forms of imperialism, industrialization and imperialism. So I will do all of those of those few pages opening the thing, and the same with just the global changes. I'll do the wrap there. So for the actual imperialization of the globe. That's what you guys will be doing, the actual history. So India, you see it here, Emily, Kartik, Ryan, Sick. Now, so the imperialism in Southeast Asia is like 1.5 pages. It's far shorter than any of the other sections, and that's why I am doubling it to about 3 pages with the other little bitty dinky one, which is imperialism in the Pacific. So, Tehran, Ali, and Alice, you guys will do both of those, okay? First one, then the next one. And then imperialism in Africa, that's Renee, Adam, and Ryan Payne, all right? Okay? So if any of you are going to be disappearing at any time in this period, which is like 2 weeks down the road, tell me in enough time so that we can look at it. Like somebody said, I'm going to be disappearing in 2 weeks. I don't remember what for. All right, so okay? All right. Yeah, and those assignment sheets are all in this new folder here, period 5. It's now being organized because Schoology likes it that way, blah, 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 from first, second, third, fourth. So all the latest stuff will be at the bottom of this folder, all right? I have a stomachache. What did the fish say when it hit a wall?
How?
Damn.
It's like worse than that.
Furthermore. In China, what is the one hot dog condiment that China does not have? It's a language joke.
Relish.
It's a language joke. You have to know Andrew. Mayo. Oh, that's so good!
Oh my God.
Mayo means don't have.
Yeah, I know. Mayonnaise is not a hot dog.
Oh, dude, mayonnaise is a hot dog.
No one
condiment.
puts mayonnaise on
If you were a
pizza.
real Merkin, you'd know that. Donald Trump knows that. He's a real Merkin. All right.
You can make the bread again. Yeah.
Huge condiment. Big. All right. All right, as promised, and as I know you've been going, wow, I can't wait. I was up from like midnight last night until it was time to go shower, change, and come here at 7:30. So it took me 7.5 hours to do this. All of chapter, whatever this is, chapter 17, as promised. So I managed to get through all but like the last 5 minutes or so. I'm going to try to get through right now. Now, this is simply the wood chapter, right? So you have it in your textbook. So this is just consolidation, clarification, and representation of it all. So I'm going to now act like I'm a student. Okay, ready? Okay, here's my
Louder.
my thesis sentence is
Louder.
the technological advances of the Industrial Revolution combined with the rise of imperialism. Okay, no. So the technological advances. I'm starting global, and then I'm going regional, and then I'm going thesis. It's all the themes, and there's actually one. I was looking back at it. I did this in like 4 minutes. The technological advances of the Industrial Revolution, global, combined with the rise of European sea power and conquest of the Americas, transformed the global economy from 1750 to 1900. Key, we've already mentioned this, more than any other technological advance since the Neolithic Revolution, since agriculture. So, in the Americas, transition to our region, the 19th century saw divergent political and economic paths for the newly independent states in the North and South. North diverges in one direction, South diverges in the other direction. That's what diverge means, not converge, diverge. In the United States and Canada, states were able to overcome challenges to A, unity, and B, stability, owing to the parliamentary and self-governing institutions of the British system. I'm modeling writing here for those of you who still think that there's only one place to put this bloody word. We always put it right here. However, notice how much better it sounds? Mesoamerica and South America, however, failed to achieve, right? You just get the rhythm. It breaks up the rhythm and the monotony of always putting that however first. This is a particularly East Asian writer's quirk. You always put however there. So please realize you can put it after the subject and it just gives a nicer rhythm. to your writing. Where are we? Mesoamerica and South America, however, failed to achieve unity and stability due to a number of factors, most significant of which was the absolute monarchic control of Spain before the revolution. Latin American states lacked the political experience, and this is key. They lacked the political experience of their northern counterparts, leading to very fragmented and unstable states throughout the 19th century. Right? What's the one thing that you think I should have included in that as a major, major development change by the end of the 19th century? Huh? That's a good one, yep. Certainly belongs to be there. There's another one. How about the westward expansion of both North America and Canada, right? They had actually like expanded to the Pacific coast, both of them, right? And so, but you know, I'm being a student, of course I'm not perfect. So let's start with the rise of the United States. I didn't have time to put this on a Google thing. So again, you have all of this already. So if you're silly, you will furiously write knowing that A, it's N would, and B, well. So first let's talk about it. I'm doing themes 3 and theme 1 together first. So our first major concept for the rise of the United States, going north, first United States, then Canada, and then south, Latin and or Central and South America. So 1776 has happened. America has declared independence and thrown off the British Empire. The very first note of importance in terms of state building is actually a foreign policy. George Washington, in his farewell address of 1797, his farewell speech, which, by the way, I think George III was so impressed with, George Washington gave up power and he stepped down. I didn't share this with you, so I'll stop. But what a great man George III of England said about George Washington, because he left the throne without dying. Was it George III?
George III was the Mad King. George IV was with the regents, King Regent.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I don't care about British royalty, so you know, I'm American. They're just people with pinkies that are always extended, who live on the people's dime. Now, but in any case, why? Because he did say farewell. He said, "I'm honoring the Constitution and ending my presidency. I'm not keeping power. I'm not a monarch here." And so, in his farewell speech to the American people, he said, "Beware entangling alliances." And this is the iconic, sort of memorize this phrase, entangling alliances. Don't get tangled up making alliances like the balance of power system in England after the treaty of, in Europe after the treaty of, the balance of power like in Europe after the treaty of Napoleon?
Congress of Vienna Treaty.
Congress of Vienna, yeah, thank you. All right, so, right, don't get involved in that, George Washington said. Stay clear of it. Be neutral. Don't intervene in other people's wars, and focus on commerce. We were born, what? 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 Why?
The U.S. now.
Oh, look at us now. Except, you know, we do everything for commerce still. I was thinking about it walking back from the Hawker Center with a stomachache just now. Who are our enemies? They're the ones who say, you cannot come into our markets. You're not welcome into our markets. That's why they're evil. Assad is brutal for that, right? So we just want to be able to sell stuff everywhere. Coca-Cola even came out with a market study in which they declared as their goal 100%. Hear this is shocking. Coca-Cola's strategic goal in business was to get, you can Google it, Google 100% stomach share. Every liquid that we put into our stomach, they wanted 100% of that market share. You put liquid in your stomach, we want to like monopolize the liquids that go into your stomach and make a profit off of every sip of liquid you take. 100% market share. Notice they got the water, right? They got Coke, so they just want blah, blah, blah. So they're doing juices, they're doing it. So yeah, we were born for commerce and capital, and in fact we were born the same year as the Bible was of capital was born. So in any case, so that's Washington's farewell address, 1797. Isolationism's second and last major detail is kind of the culmination of it, an extension of it, the Monroe Doctrine, where President Monroe in 1823 makes very clear to Europe in his diplomacy, European powers do not come into the Western Hemisphere. North and South America are our sphere of influence, the United States. Don't meddle. We are the hegemon of the Western Hemisphere, of the New World. So that is the Monroe Doctrine. He warns Europe to stay out of the New World, and this is the beginning of a very useful phrase here, still happening today, dollar imperialism. Old school imperialism is invade like Portugal and Spain did with armies and take over. Do you have a question, Rabia? Arjun?
I think in Push they told us that dollar imperialism or dollar diplomacy was like later in the century.
I told you this is the beginning of it. Do you not see that this is the beginning of it? We are already saying that we are a nation born in commerce, beginning, Arjun, of dollar imperialism. So I'm talking about change over time, the development of it. Yes, it will be later, but you already see the seeds there, do you not? We are the hegemon of the Western Hemisphere. Europe stay out, and we want commerce with all nations and wars with none. So, I mean, you can reject that argument if you want to, but I don't really, I don't want to debate what you were told by another teacher in another class. I am making an argument here. It is a claim. We can see in seed, in fetus, the fetus of dollar imperialism here. Nobody else can interfere with us. We don't want to do war. We don't want to make alliances. We just want to trade. And by God, don't you dare come into the Western Hemisphere and interfere in the markets that we want to dominate. Now, let's go on to early state building. I can't find my hand, my arm. Been driving me crazy all day. If anybody can find it, I'll give you like cool points. You know my red hand with the
It's the fingernails.
How did that just disappear? I think somebody stole it. They wanted like a souvenir, like because they knew they weren't going to win that portrait. No, it can't be there because there's nothing. What? Okay, anyway, I guess I'll just pop. Okay, so now state building. So, okay, I'm going to slow down. Very important here. The United States showed that it had learned its state building due to its practical experience, and that's the key word, practical experience with Enlightenment political theory, constitutional government, representative democracy, so on and so forth. Because when their Articles of Confederation, the first Constitution of the United States, did not work well. And you'll see Latin America deal with the same thing. Oh, we wrote a Constitution and it's not working well. But it failed in Latin America. In the United States, 13 years later-ish, they replaced the Articles of Confederation, the first Constitution, with a new Constitution, the current one that we have right now with its amendments. So, and those reforms of this second Constitution, the new one of 1789, did work to preserve the Union. Significant, so what? Again, American state building reflected a colonial society that had good experience at state building, at writing laws and designing governments that would not fall apart, and at reforming them successfully. That's all. And yes, the Civil War is coming. So yes, this works until, what, 80 years later, 70 years later. Now let's go on state building and expansion. Manifest destiny is just the concept in United States history that it is our destiny to go from 13 colonies westward until we reach the extent of our geographic barrier, the Pacific coast. So our manifest destiny, manifest means obvious or revealed. Our destiny as a nation is to expand to the Pacific. We started as 13 colonies on the Atlantic. Our destiny is to expand all the way across the Mississippi River into the west. And so we did it in really 3 simple steps. Napoleon needed money. 1803, remember, he took power in what year and declared himself emperor? Don't you remember? 1800, because that's exactly 1,000 years to the year after Charlemagne let the Pope crown him. That's 1,000 years later, Napoleon grabs the crown from the Pope. So in 3 years later, Napoleon's like in the thick of wars, Napoleonic Wars. Jefferson's like, hey, the Mississippi is French. we wouldn't mind buying it if you're kind of tight for cash. And Napoleon says, I'm up to it. And so, where's my map? Oh, so yeah, so here's a pretty good map. Let's look at it really quickly. This is the United States by 1787. This part from Wisconsin down, that's the Mississippi River. And here is the Louisiana Purchase from Napoleon. So that was all French. Thomas Jefferson buys that from Napoleon. I love the language. Notice we say I'm going to the bathroom or the water closet. We don't say I'm going to defecate. Euphemisms. Defecate means take a poo, for those of you who don't know your Latinate version. Defecate is to poo-poo as osculate is to kiss. I've given you the don't osculate speech, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so defecate, poo-poo. Here's a euphemism for you. Annex. It means steal. Okay, we stole Texas from Mexico. This was part of Mexico, and we stole it. And then we stole, there it is, Texas annexation theft. And that's 1845. 3 years later, that was yummy. What can we have for dessert from Mexico? How about California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and the rest of New Mexico and Colorado. So, Manifest Destiny, bam, done. 1803, 1845, 1848, done. America has reached the Pacific Ocean.
Senor Burell, it's Tejas.
Huh?
It's Tejas, Senor Burell.
What?
Tejas.
Tejas, okay.
And also didn't
All right, thank you, Matthew, for correcting my English when I'm not speaking Spanish. Okay. Remind me to chop you up later. Okay. I'm going to give you an argument when people slam China for their brutality in Tibet. Oh, free Tibet, those nasty Chinese. Look what they're doing in Tibet. They're letting Tibetans roam around in the Tibetan highlands with their flocks of yaks, doing their pastoral traditional living as they've done for thousands of years, speaking their language, practicing their Tibetan Buddhism, but not with a separatist Dalai Lama, with a state-appointed one granted. Whereas meanwhile, look what, there were those people called Native Americans, remember them? They had all sorts of civilizations in the United States, remember, right? Yeah. Back in period 3, period 4. Well, I was born in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where the Trail of Tears of the Cherokee Nation started. And the Cherokee Nation called it the Trail of Tears. I don't think America did. To them, it was just a deportation of all Cherokee Indians from the southeast, Tennessee, Georgia, the Carolinas, to the most worthless piece of reservation land that none of the Americans wanted. And so we'll just put a big border around that and put all the Cherokees there. No longer forests, mountains, rivers, but scrubland, wasteland. So given the choice of being a Tibetan or a Native American, forced deportation, put on reservations, we slaughtered their food source in order to win our war against the Americans by slaughtering the buffalo. Trains going across the prairie where the buffalo are with machine guns that are just mowing down herds of buffalo that the Native Americans lived off of. Scalpers were hired to go out and kill and collect the scalps of the Indians they killed as proof of killing, and they would be paid per scalp. So we were genocidal both literally and also culturally. I watched a documentary last week about how the children of Native Americans were put into schools in which they were forced to cut their hair. Did I show you this? No? Forced to cut their hair, wear Western clothes, and were told, let everything, and this is a quote from an American politician, let everything that is Indian within you die. So the Koreans relate to this because the Japanese did the very same thing to the Koreans. You're not going to speak your language. You're not going to use your names. You're going to take Japanese names. You're going to study Japanese, right? Right? So assimilation is education, right? We put them in schools and cut their long hair and took off their traditional clothes and put them in Western clothes and such. So, and it's just so weird to hear trying to criticize when you go to Tibet today and the Tibetans, yeah, they complain. Nobody likes living under an overlord. But as overlords go, this was a brutal, brutal, brutal manifest destiny because the people that lived there were no longer allowed to live in the places we expanded into. Let's move on. Now let's talk about conflict. We've done state building, expansion, and conflict now. That is theme 3 in verbatim order. So, conflict, the Civil War, 1861 to 65. The one problem with the Constitution was slavery. It was left as a state's right, a state decision. But abolitionists in the North start pressing for ending slavery. Slaves were used in the South where cotton, tobacco were grown. The North was industrial. Remember the what was it called in Manhattan, the port? Break of bulk? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Break of bulk, right? Where cargo would be broken up and put onto trains, boats, wagons, whatever, and so ships would be unloaded and the cargo would be broken up into its various modes of transportation over land. So just an indication that the North was a far more manufacturing-centered area than the South. Railroads were up there in the North, so already more industrial. But, and so we already talked about the abolitionists, and so they start pressing for ending slavery. Well, before the government could even respond to that, the South seceded. I think South Carolina was first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, they said, we are no longer part of the Union. There's no such thing as the United States of America anymore. We are now the Union of the Confederate States. And so the South was threatening to split the country. Chin Huangdi facing the disunity of China after uniting it. Tiananmen Square threatening the unity of China in 1989, so on and so forth, right? So when states are faced with breaking up, with fragmentation and the end of unity, well, they typically declare war against whoever is saying we're going to break the state. And so Lincoln declares war on the South. From the South's point of view, the North was not representing their economic interests. We are plantation owners. We need slaves. You're industrialists. You don't need slaves, so it doesn't hurt you to outlaw slavery if you side with the abolitionists. It hurts us. So economic argument versus human moral argument. An argument that continues in America to this day. So, notice Lincoln was not saying, "Oh, this is a moral issue. Let me free the slaves." Lincoln was saying, "This is a political issue. Let me preserve the Union." Midway through the Civil War, Lincoln's thoughts on this evolved. I'm being witty for those of you who follow politics, and until he finally decided to emancipate the slaves. Slaves were given hope in the South with the Reconstruction post-war policies, but those which gave them equality and all sorts of really exciting hopes for the future, but they were quickly smashed by counter elites in the South who ended up denying them civil rights and all sort of thing. So for generations, 2 or 3, 4 generations, the slaves after the Civil War, really freedom was a mixed blessing. They were lynched even more. The KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, forms and becomes a very popular thing. Over our dead bodies, literally, will slaves be ever equal to white men? Yes?
Did the slaves ever led a self-led revolt, just like
Several law-abiding.
Yeah, if you go to the history, yes, there are acts of resistance from the slaves and such, yes. But so long term, this is a huge so what? Because notice what we've just seen. The United States has no way of knowing this, although I'm sure some long-sighted, far-sighted people could see it. Give us 100 years and we will be a world power. Because look at us geographically. To our north is the just most wonderful, wonderful neighboring nation situation you could ever ask for. Because they're Canadian. They're not. God bless you, Canadians, you're not a threat. Your population is too small. It's way too cold up there for there to be a lot of you, and we industrialized first. So you will never threaten us. In fact, you're scared of us, and we'll get to that in a minute. You're scared of us. Down to the south, well, we've already shown what we can do with Mexico. I think I'll take, is there anything left down there? Oh, we've cleaned the plate. Okay. Let's see. We'll find other places. And then the greatest defenses, east and west, an ocean on each side. So long term, we are still united. We kept the unity in the Civil War, and we are geographically isolated from any major land threat. Far, far, far more isolated than China. Incredibly lucky. So the long-term effect of all of that bit was the U.S. is given very, very good prospects for being a future world power, which of course they will be when Europe blows itself to smithereens in 2 world wars, while America just sits across an ocean saying, hey, you want to buy more weapons? Here, 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 and gets even richer. So, American empire begins now. We have an interaction. We have an interaction with Spain. Spain has 2 colonies, I think, remaining in the Americas. One is Cuba, one is Puerto Rico. And the Cubans and the Puerto Ricans want independence. They ask America to help. And America says, sure, we'll help you. And after we help them overthrow the Spanish, we say, but actually we want to leave our armies in Cuba that helped you overthrow your leader. And Cuba's like, wait a minute, that wasn't part of the deal. And America's like, sorry, we forgot to tell you. And the same with Puerto Rico. So they thought they were getting independence. They were just getting new overlords. Why? Because we had corporate interests there. What were our interests in Cuba? What do you think? Sugar? Tobacco? Fruit? So, so this is the growth of my sort of like, let's watch dollar imperialism grow, because we have corporate interest in Cuba, and so we are not going to let the Cuban people have what's the word I want? What's the word I want? No, come on, give me Woodrow Wilson, self-determination. We're not going to let them determine their own futures. We are instead going to put military dictators as our puppets there. We will pay them very well to protect our interests and keep their labor cheap so that our profits are high, right? And so, and all of this leads to, it's a wood term. Central and Latin America start resenting America, the United States, as, quote, the bully of the North. And that's, I don't know how to say it in Spanish, but finally the last part of the American empire is the Philippines, because Spain also had the Philippines as a colony. And when we beat Spain in that war, we also took the Philippines, liberated the Philippines, stayed in the Philippines. And when you know about the atrocities in the Philippines when the Filipinos said, you're not leaving your army here. And America said, oh yeah, and then the atrocities there are legion, but most American kids aren't taught it. I'm going to tell you a quick story. It was in the news this week. There was a 2nd or 3rd grade textbook in the United States education system that had a little coloring book of the map in the 17th and 18th century, Columbian Exchange, and then the slave trade, triangular trade, and all sort of thing. And it had a map, and it said underneath the map, so the kiddies are just coloring little things in the map. But underneath the map, it says, Africans and Europeans came to the New World in search of new opportunities and better standards of living. Period. And that's all it said. So look what kids are learning in school, because we don't face our past. People don't know about the horrible atrocities that we committed against the Philippines, and they were brutal. And nobody knows about them, and a million other things. So, so you do. Okay, finally. This is our last political point. Teddy Roosevelt, TR he's called. TR, speak softly but carry a big stick. That's slang for Mexican in America. If you're a racist, I'm sure Donald Trump users, they call them sticks all the time probably. So speak, some of them, sorry Matthew, I know you're a Donald Trump, but you're not a racist one. They're non-racist Donald Trump supporters, just to be clear. Okay, because we need to be great again. Now, I like one thing about Trump. Trump's like, we're not going to let people die on the streets because they can't afford health care. He says that. He's like, this is America. We don't want people dying on our streets, do we? And he's looking at this right-wing audience. They're saying, repeal Obamacare, right? And he's like, no. Trump's showing more compassion than your standard establishment Republicans. That's very interesting to me. So he's not all bad. In fact, he's huge. Okay, yeah, so, all right, so what does he do? He built the Navy. America doesn't have a navy. It does now. And the second thing he does is he makes the Panama Canal. Who doesn't know what the Panama Canal is? Okay, well let me show you what the Panama Canal is. Why would you build a canal in Panama? Because, here you go, right here. You see here, this here thing is North America, and this here thing is like Panama, the isthmus, rhymes with Christmas, the isthmus of Panama. Who made that word of Panama? And, well, you know, to get from like the Atlantic to the Pacific before we built the canal, you had to like sail all the way down, bloody around South America and all the way back up. It's frozen up north, and there's scary Canadians up there, so you don't want to go up there. So yeah, so you know, to hell with that. Just like get your bulldozer and bang. And so we built a canal there, and so now we can sail from here to here. Whoop, done. And so now we have much more mobility in order to patrol our coasts, defend our coasts, and also respond to any sorts of inconvenient resistance to our empire. Thank you. Yes, Ryan?
Didn't the Spanish or French, I don't know, start building the canal, but then the U.S. came in?
Yeah, the French built the Suez initially.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a completely different continent, so I'm not going to go there. All that you need to know for AP World is look at what just happened, and notice that Panama Canal expanded our naval capabilities. So now we have very, very fast and effective navigation from coast to coast of both North and South America. We just made it much, much faster. Next, demographics. Immigrations. Business encouraged in the 19th century United States. Why?
They want navy industry.
They wanted cheap labor. And they didn't care if it was uneducated, the lowest, the poorest. You're tired, you're weak, you're poor, you're huddling masses, yada yada, whatever the Statue of Liberty says. Because they make great, great hired, unskilled labor. The more we have, the more they compete with each other, and the cheaper our labor costs are. Because we are using now the assembly line method of production. Please know that this is the factory system, getting more and more efficient, more and more unskilled. So the assembly line, we already talked about, I'm the person who gets the Barbie and puts the wig on it, and it just goes on down. So I don't make a Barbie. Barbie's labor is divided. Everybody has one thing to do to that Barbie, division of labor on an assembly line. So you don't need an education, you don't need to be able to read, maybe more than like danger, and yada yada. So we encouraged immigration. One demographic note, notice there is, in the former northern Mexico regions, now the western United States, well, we got this ethnic minority called Mexicans now, right? Because of our annexation of, don't use theft for AP World exam. Use the word annexation. Now, so we had migrations in two waves. This is demographics. We had migrations in two waves. First, the 1840s, from where you see it there. Basically Western Europe, Germany and Ireland. Notice, not Eastern Europe yet. It's kind of interesting, they come in two waves. And so the Irish, well, they speak sort of English. So although if you've ever spoken to a real Irishman, you're like, dude, I have no idea what you're saying. Because it is such a thick and strong dialect. Yeah, and you know, obvious, some went to farm the frontiers as we expanded westward, and others like got jobs in the cities. New York, other port cities, yada yada. Industrial jobs, whatever. China, the Opium War happened in the 1840s as well, 1838 to 1841. So when the Opium War, the British Empire like opened fire on China for not letting England sell drugs in China, there was a lot of refugee, a lot of dislocation and such. Also the overpopulation. We haven't talked about that yet, have we? Did we start talking about the Chinese population starting to grow?
Yeah.
Explode? Yeah, right. And so you can see why there would be a push factor pushing Chinese out of China in search of the pull factor of, wow, there's like underpopulated opportunities for food and employment in the Americas. So, and the Chinese built the railroads and worked farms and all that. The second wave was Southern and Eastern Europeans, 1880s. what were the effects of the Civil War on America's economic growth? Now we're on to theme. Kartik, you're looking like, I said it, you're going to have a test on this stuff, so you can, I will just trust that you know what you're doing. You scare me when you look like you're having a food coma. I sympathize, but you scare me. I want you to do well. So, theme 4, economics and technology, remember. So, and here's an example why. The Civil War. The North needed to make weapons to win against the South. They also needed to make railroads to transport troops rapidly to whatever battles they're fighting against the South. And so they do both of those things. And that accelerated industrialization in the North. It accelerated it. War has a way of stimulating economic productivity. Same thing got us out of the Depression in World War II, right? So the interesting thing is what happens after the war's over. Well, let's keep building railroads, and let's build them to the West Coast. No longer like north-south to fight the war. And so the Transcontinental Railroad is made from Atlantic to Pacific. The Chinese came to build that in California. Across the Pacific, the Chinese come, and so they're building eastward as the, the Westerners are building westward, and they're meeting somewhere in the middle and such. And so the Chinese are known for being the builders of the western half of that railroad. Migrations. Clearly, this makes it easier to settle the West. You can now take a train out west. Not surprising that farms would mechanize. Farms have been mechanizing since the British enclosed their farms and started doing technological experimentation on farming. So the same thing diffused to the United States, and now America is actually an exporting agricultural nation. Breadbasket to the world, we call ourselves. We see it starting here. It's a good phrase, breadbasket to the world. That's what we call ourselves, because we have a lot of arable land, 3 times more than China. And we have 1/5 the number of people as China, so we've got a lot of food to export. The arms industry, we start exporting those weapons. We're not using them against each other anymore. We got weapons factories, so let's start selling weapons. That is a continuity to this day. The United States economy has depended always, huge share of its GDP on selling weapons to international buyers. We're the biggest weapons dealer in the world. Now, for those of you who find your notes useful and such, sometimes I just throw in some connections for you to make and other things to remember and kind of think about as we keep approaching our free response questions where you are looking for interesting connections across periods and such. Military-industrial complex, what president warned against this and during what decade? Late 50s. So notice, the Civil War ended in 1865. In about 1958, 59, maybe 60. Republican President General Dwight D. Eisenhower gives his farewell address, and he says, beware the military-industrial complex. Beware the corporations that make weapons and want to sell them and need wars to happen so that they can sell weapons. Because the only time people buy new weapons is when they blow up their old ones, right? So notice this is the military-industrial complex sort of in seed for our arms industry. Finally, Hawaii. We're talking about economics and technology. Hawaii is not a state yet, but Hawaii has been noticed by a corporation called Dole. You've all eaten Dole bananas. You've all eaten Dole fruit cocktail, right? You haven't seen the commercial that I saw when I was a kid? Dole bananas are great. Bananas in the grape because they're Dole, because they're Dole. You haven't seen the little yellow Chiquita banana and I'm here to say, you don't know? Okay. All right. Okay, in any case, yeah, so Dole bananas, they have little Dole sticker, Dole fruit cocktails in the canned goods, right?
Yeah.
Hell, you eat this stuff, you don't even know, right? Because mom doesn't tell you, she just opens a can of it and pours it to a thing and then says, look what I made.
Oh my goodness.
So, oh, that's right, Matthew, I just insulted your mom. Okay, so.
How dare you insult the memory?
So, that was good. All right, so Dole established your sugar and pineapple plantations in Hawaii, where these people called Hawaiians live.
Yeah.
And they're like, what the? Meanwhile, and then some people in Korea hear about this Dole pineapple plantation in Hawaii, and they say what?
Yeah.
They want to immigrate. What do they say? Along with the Japanese and the Chinese and the Filipinos, they immigrate to Hawaii because they hear that there's... Okay, I thought you were going to be funny again. All right. Yeah. Watch this space. Do you think Hawaii, like, knocked on Washington, D.C.'s door and said, "Hi, will you take us as your 50th, your 49th, 50th, 49th?
It was the last day. It was
Last 50th? Will you take us? Will you let us in and be a united? Do you think Hawaii, like,
Nah.
begged America to, like,
You just
Nah, man.
no? Huh? So now let's talk about culture in 3 minutes. Here's the biggest idea. You're going to get lost in all this verbiage. I'll tell you the important idea. American culture in the 19th century imitated European culture. Think of the Roman Empire imitating Greek culture, because Greece had an older and richer and more advanced arts, philosophies, drama, architecture, everything. Just an older, more sophisticated culture. Well, the same is true of Europe in relation to America now. It's a very young state, and so just as the Romans were sort of imitating the Greeks, so were the Americans imitating the Europeans. I am a huge lover of English Romanticism particularly, and what is the Romantic movement in terms of culture? Artists and novelists and poets. We're really sick of the Enlightenment with its emphasis on everything but emotions and imagination and fantasy and love and nature, because they were instead focusing on science and logic. And so it was reaction to, and now industry, and just calculating for profit. What a horrible, horrible thing we're becoming. We're becoming just these horrible people of only, we have two things in our head. Well, that's not reasonable, and how much money can I make off of it, right? So we're just calculating in either way. And so the U.S. Romantics that are most well known, and yes, Emerson, Thoreau are technically called transcendentalists, but it's a subset of the Romantic movement because it's a rebellion against this narrowing of the human range of experience and emotion. And Walt Whitman, his Leaves of Glass, his Leaves of Grass is a gorgeous, gorgeous set of poems. Gorgeous. So, and I just added that because I think AP English, I hope you read some Romanticism. Science. Obviously huge. Charles Darwin found overwhelming evidence. He wasn't looking for it, and he found it, and he put it together, and he's like, oh my God, is the Bible that wrong? The common conventional wisdom is that God created the earth 6,000 years ago because people read Genesis and the rest of the Bible, and that's what they deduce. A Bishop Ussher in the 18th century, in the 1700s, actually did the math in the Bible from God creating the heavens and the earth in Genesis 1 to like the end of Jesus' life. And it talks about like generation after generation, it tells how long people live and all sort of thing. And so he was like, yeah, the age of the earth is 6,400 years old. Darwin discovers fossil evidence. He discovers strata of geological formations that show that, wow, there are fish fossils 100 feet up there on that cliff. There are fish fossils. This cliff used to be under the ocean. What the hell, right? Clearly this creation is far more complex. So it's a new Copernican revolution, right? The Bible was wrong once in terms of the earth being the center of the universe. The Bible is wrong again about the age of the earth and about the origin of man. God didn't make Adam and Eve. We evolved. We evolved from earlier forms of life. And so the whole process of natural selection and such, a huge cultural moment still haunting the United States today. There are some conservative states in the United States that their boards of education are saying, teach two theories in your textbooks of science. One, the creationist theory, and the Bible is the scientific evidence for that. The Bible says so, and that's the evidence. And the other, the fossil record of Darwin. Natural selection, genetic, all sorts of converging lines of evidence. So that's a huge moment, right? And again, I've just told you why. So there's another connection to today, continuity over time. Finally, Here's another connection to make. Wood doesn't tell you this in the textbook, so these are me sharing thoughts with you. I know it's the end of the day. I know that some of you are probably half sick from interim, and I know that you're probably as tired as I am anyway. But we want to get through this chapter. So this is what I want to tell you in terms of an idea worth considering finding significant. It is. Just as the Romantics were sickening of the Enlightenment's far too cold inhumanity, let's be rational and let's be profitable. Freud undermined the Enlightenment's view of man himself. The Enlightenment said we are rational people. We are reasonable. Remember, Newton did the laws of motion and figured all that out? The universe runs by laws. We are rational. An argument can persuade you because we're rational. We're learning that you can argue against Donald Trump supporters all you want to, and you know what? Even the best reasons in the world won't change their minds. You can argue until you're blue in the face with a person, and if they want to believe what they believe, I'm sure you've all gone through this. The clearest argument, the most rational argument, the most logical argument, the most overwhelming argument in the world will not change their minds. They'll get angry, they'll stop listening, they'll go blah, 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 blah. So we're not rational. And Freud was noticing this. So repeat after me. Freud. Look at this and don't repeat after me. Freud. Okay? It's Freud. It's a very, very awkward name. Sigmund Freud, Austrian, father of psychology. All right? Modern psychology. And whereas the Enlightenment had this model of we are rational, Freud said, oh hell no, we are not only irrational, we are dark, instinctive, and scary irrational. We have instincts. So Darwin says we're animals. Freud said, oh, you bet you are, and we really have instincts like animals too. We'll kill, we'll rape, we'll steal, we'll do anything, because beneath our civilized surfaces is a beast. Very Hobbesian, in fact. So if you want to know, if you haven't had, it's very interesting. He broke down the human consciousness or psyche into three parts: the id, the instinctive lust, the id. I love the word. All of us who are educated love the word because, dude, your id is just like totally out of control. It's your animal instincts. I want sex, I want food, I want warmth, I want whatever I want. It's the baby when you take it away from mom while it's nursing. That baby was not finished with that breast and that nice warm milk going in, and that baby will scream bloody murder and slap, hit, pull hair, bite, whatever. I want mom's breast, right? The id. But the ego says, well, but you know what, so you know, we grow up a little bit, we still want everything that we wanted as babies, but we know that there are consequences to just like going, I don't like him, I'm going to go just punch him. There are consequences to being violent, to being rapacious, to being all these things. And so we start saying, I can't do what I want to do. And that starts making us a little bit crazy because we have conflicts, internal conflicts. We're having to repress our instincts, our lusts. And the ego is the thing saying, do that, because the superego, that's mom, dad, and society saying, don't do that. Don't be true to your instincts. And so that causes abnormal psychological states, and it causes us to just be very, very sick, twisted, and weird people, according to Freud. So notice how far we have gone from the Enlightenment. Oh, just show them the truth and they will. No, here it's like the irrational. This is the birth of the irrational. And notice that World War I is coming up, and it will sort of justify Freud's theory. Because for all the European states to have such overwhelming force, such horribly, horribly destructive weapons, and to turn them against each other knowing that it's just mutual destruction, and they did it. Irrational, dark, worse than animal. Animals have never waged this kind of war, that's us. Or certain classes of us. There are a lot of people against it, of course. So, yeah. So again, closer to Darwinian view, man is an animal. Now, let's talk about Canada. Any questions on the Americas? Freud was really interesting. I would show you the Marx Brothers with Harpo Marx. Anybody know who Harpo Marx is? Do you have a question, Matt? Okay. But I'm not going to show you the Marx Brothers. Maybe another time. If you want to see the Marx Brothers, They're brilliant comedy from the Charlie Chaplin era, 1930s, 1940s, Karl Marx. Except no, they're comedy, American comedy. How many of you have seen the Halloween or the little mask? It's glasses and it's got a big nose on it, and then it's got a big mustache under it, and you put it on.
I've seen that.
That's Groucho Marx. That's one of the Marx brothers. He is a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant New York Jew. They all are, and they are truly brothers. And they did vaudeville. They did like stage comedy. And then the era of film came along. Groucho Marx is American comedy at its best. He didn't need curse words because he was an intellectual. He was hilarious though. Can't you see what I'm trying to say? I love you. Check out this line. It's funny. I love you. Will you marry me? Did your husband leave you a lot of money? Answer the second question first. And his brother, though, Harpo. Harpo is the one with the blonde hair who never says a word, and he's got this like bicycle horn in his trench coat. That's all, because he's a mute, right? And he's got this crazy, crazy blonde curly hair, and he never says a word. He's the id. That's why I'm bringing it up. Just do a YouTube search for Harpo Marx. Harp, the stringed instrument. He plays a harp. Harpo Marx. Do a YouTube search and watch him. Id unleashed. He sees a pretty woman. He starts chasing her, and she sees him, and she runs. He sees somebody with something he wants. He starts stealing it one way or the other. He gets angry. He like pulls out something to like kill you. He's hilarious. He's wonderful. He rapes. He kills. He steals. And he's funny about it all the time, and he never succeeds for it. He loves horses romantically. If you do Best of Harpo Marx, you'll see it. You'll see like a 4-minute thing. If we get to the end, we'll maybe do it. Okay. Now, let's talk about the Dominion of Canada.
Is that illegal?
No, it's not illegal to talk about the Dominion of Canada. Be quiet. Loving horses. There's nothing wrong with this. I'm a horse lovist. Okay. I'm a horse. I'm a...
Trans horse.
Okay, anyway.
Equisexual?
I'm a horsosexual.
Equisexual?
Equisexual. Ooh, good etymological skills on you. Get up. You smooth. Okay. Huh? Latin America. Okay, Canada. Look how short Canada is. Ready? Bam. Done. Okay, so let's get through Canada real quick. Here's your marker event, 1867. Before that, Canada is a colony, a British colony. After that, Britain's like, oh, you can be independent. Canada didn't like go, no. The British gave Canada its autonomy. Why? Because they were afraid of Canada saying, you know what, we're sick of this, let's do what the Americans did. So England negotiated. They learned their lesson from the American Revolution, and they negotiated to self-government by the Canadians with a special relationship with England. That's all you need to know for this class. Why did they do it? Again, because they feared Canada would revolt like the USA. So they negotiated self-rule by the Canadians. One demographic thing to know about Canada, which you know. So now make sense of it. There are French-speaking Canadians in Quebec, right? So there were Anglo and French in Canada. And of course that threatens unity. So how did the Canadians keep their unity? The biggest thing that unified these French and English Canadians was fear of the United States. Because they'd seen what America was doing to Mexico, and they're like, and in 1812, in the War of 1812, America did invade Canada. Huh? Yeah. But Canada was threatened, especially as America is starting to industrialize more and more, all this sort of thing. So hurry up with that loud, quickly. And finally, so because of their fear of an American invasion, I was watching an international relations lecture by Steve Mearsheimer of Harvard, given to a Canadian audience last week. It was a great little speech, a little lecture on why China's rise will not be peaceful. He had an international relations theory, very, very interesting, 35 minutes. If anybody wants to know, shoot me an email. It was really worth watching. And in the question and answer session after it with the audience, which was like an hour and a half, and his lecture was only 30 minutes. For an hour and a half, they talked about his theory, because he's major, he's big name in international relations. He was giving it to a Canadian audience, and it was hilarious because he's American, and he kept on like messing with the Canadians about why their capital was Ottawa instead of Toronto. Do you get it now? You have to know the map enough. Where's Toronto?
Very close. It's on
How close to America is Toronto, Nicholas?
Close enough for them to be in their sports leagues.
You're across a lake.
You're across a lake. Way too close to America for the Canadians to go, yeah, we can trust America not to. Oh, hell no. Let's put it up in Ottawa, farther away, right? So they chose their capital to just be far away from the American border. Okay, now let's talk about Canada's state formation. It's a federal system. Talk to each other and tell each other what a federal system is.
Oh, but it's just
Nope. Okay, so if it helps you to like realize that we're doing a comparison contrast, United States state formation and Canadian state formation, this is the comparative, the similar thing. Both U.S. and Canada are federal systems. What is a federal system? The central government, Washington, D.C., Ottawa, the central capital, has jurisdiction over things like defense because the whole country needs defense. Has over interstate trade across provinces and states. But it allows within the states themselves far more autonomy in the provincial or state capitals. Sacramento in California, Knoxville in Tennessee, I don't know. I'm sure we have a capital. Okay, so both are federal systems. But Canada chose the parliamentary system. That's the contrast. The US has a president, Canada has a prime minister. What's the difference? You've never known that, have you? So what's the difference? Kind of weird. England has a prime minister. Prime Minister David Cameron.
Doesn't Singapore have a prime minister?
Singapore has a prime minister too.
And a president.
So yeah, I know. So let's not talk about Singapore. I don't even know. I don't know Singapore's state formation. So let's just stay with where we are. So what is a minister? A minister is a member of parliament, right? That's all. So what is a prime minister? The first member of parliament, like the one who like carries out and executes the will of parliament. An MP is not separate from parliament. David Cameron is just the like leader of parliament. He is the number one parliamentarian because he's the prime minister of parliament. So that's the difference in parliamentary system. They have a prime minister. In the U.S., we have a president, separate branch of government, executive, legislative. And so the president has much more power than the prime minister, yeah, because he can actually oppose the legislative body. Finally, expansion. All you got to know is they did the same thing. They expanded to the west, and they made a railroad east to west. That's all you got to know. Yep.
Canada was friendlier to the Native Americans when they were expanding, right?
No.
Yeah, I can only infer from what I understand of Native American life that it seems more humane in Canada, but I honestly don't know.
It was, but nowadays we treat the natives a lot worse.
Are you Canadian?
Yeah.
Yeah, Canadians. Yeah, I mean, you see a lot in the news now about injustice to Canadian Americans. I know. Now let's move on. 15 minutes. Let's move on to Latin America. You think you're tired of listening to me? I am so tired of talking. So, there's the big picture. We've already said it was in my thesis, but just to repeat. So we've seen how both Canada and the United States managed to succeed maintaining unity and having a stable government. Notice there were no civil war, yeah, but otherwise there was no, like, since then there was no possibility of breakdown. In Latin America, they could not prevent fragmentation. They could not establish stable, legitimate governments, and they could not, therefore, the complex argument. What was it? Well, therefore, we can't keep unity. We can't have a stable government. We keep having revolutions. That means we can't develop our economy. That's the big picture there. Why are they to this day industrially less developed than the North? Well, this is one reason. They didn't have the political stability, for people to invest, for people to trust that this is a safe investment, I'm going to build a factory here. Well, not if they keep having revolutions and such. I just want you to notice the map here. This sort of says it all. Look at Central America and look at Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama. And there's the Panama Canal right there, by the way. These were all part of Mexico or Gran Colombia of Simon Bolivar, who we talked about in period, what, 4? Yeah, right. And so the Mexican independence with the South American. So this was all supposed to be Gran Colombia Boulevard, either up into here or Mexico down into here. But look at what happens. You've got the fragmentation. You've got all of these states in Central America, and you've got Gran Colombia becoming Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador. Where's Ecuador? Here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Ecuador gets excluded.
Okay. All right, so that is just a map's demonstration of the fact that by 1850, the Central and South America could not do what the United States and Canada, what North America could do, because Gran Colombia split into these, Mexico split into those. We're just going with fragmentation here, basic idea. Right? Now, what are the causes? Four major causes, and let's just not even dwell on them too much. You can read the details in Wood. One is regionalism. I'm not loyal to this nation. I'm loyal to this region. Very quickly, I've got Tuscany here and Italy and Texans in the United States because the Texans, they're always threatening to secede. We are less national than we are regional. We are Texans. It's almost like we're Americans second, we're Texans first. What's his name? What's the governor of Texas? Rick Perry was threatening openly to secede. Rick Perry, the governor of Texas, was going, we're going to secede, make our own independent state. In the 21st century, right? So that's an example of regionalism. We're not loyal to the nation, we're loyal to our region. In Tuscany and North Italy, I was there many times. I love it, everybody who goes. That's where Florence is, all sorts of Renaissance towns. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. It's where the olive groves are and the vineyards and gorgeous, green, lush, fertile land. And so I would go there when I was in the army. I'd drive across the Alps and down into Italy, and I'd always stop at Tuscany. I never made it to Rome because every time Rome's further south, I was like, screw Rome, I'm just going to stay in Tuscany. And so I'm roaming Tuscany. I talked to a Tuscan farmer. Oh, I'm talking to a farmer, and I'm like, do you speak Italian? He said, no, io parlo Toscano. I speak Tuscan, he said, right? Regional. He didn't identify with Italy, he identified with Tuscany. Right, so that's one problem. Second, we already said, so I'm not going to drive this again. They had no experience in representative democracy. The short version of this, the elites knew of Enlightenment theory. They knew of all of the French philosophers' theories of politics, but it was just theory. It was just that because they never practiced it, experienced it. And so in the absence of any sort of institutions of parliamentary, representative democracy, constitutional democracy, rule of law, the only way to voice opposition was not through voice or vote or deliberation or debate, it was through violence. And so you just have violence instead of debate and vote, and that leads to overthrows of governments, writings of new constitutions. They don't work, and it's just a vicious cycle. 3, personalist rule. What does personalist mean? This is the language of this type of political breakdown. Donald Trump is a personalist. I've got charisma. I came in on my $1 billion, big, huge, great, winning white pony. Sorry, horse. I'm wearing the white hat. Follow me. Yes?
Would you say the military leaders in the Roman Empire, like Julius Caesar and all that, would also be
Yes, they would be personalists, yes. And they would also be like caudillos, because these are warlords. These are men with regional armies under them who are examples of personalists. They're charismatic, authoritarian, military leading. Yes?
So they're warlords, basically.
Yeah, not always, but usually. So regional warlords, caudillos. We've got some examples of them, but you know what? You will forget them. Just very quickly, I will. So what are we looking at here? In Argentina, this guy, De Rosas, there was problems. Remember we talked about the fact that Argentina started doing cattle ranching and deforestation and all these horrible things that in long term. So there were urban elites in Argentina versus the rural ranchers, and there was class conflict between them and all sorts of disunity. And so this guy came in as a warlord and did unite and keep the peace, and he did it through terror. But it worked. Many people, I read people, and I'm shocked to be doing this in my lifetime, I read people predicting that a dictator will come in and restore some type of order to the United States. It's like we're inching closer and closer to, okay, revolution's over, we need a Napoleon. We're starting to applaud Donald Trump. So in any case, so notice here's the point that I'm making. It works. They can work. Sometimes they're needed and they work. You've given us order, good. But notice what withers. Our experience of republicanism, of the rule of law. If you get a question on politics in the New World in period 5, notice that there were personalists in the U.S. too, and so this is another good north-south contrast to make. Andrew Jackson, I think the only American president from my home state of Tennessee, the biggest redneck ever to be in the White House, threw big keg parties, beer parties, for his inauguration and invited all the rednecks to come, and they just got shit-faced drunk in the White House and just threw up all over the place, right? And just because he was a partying guy, he was named Old Hickory, and he was on the $20 bill, Andrew Jackson, and he was a personalist. Huh? Was he a good president?
Yeah.
He is known for, and Wood uses him as the textbook case for, literally, for flouting the rule of law. Because I'm too big, and too tough, and too indifferent to law. I'm big, I'm huge, right? So he would oppose and overstep the law as president, and everybody'd say, you can't do that. And he's like, well, you stop me. He ended up expanding presidential powers. The president, the office of the presidency got more powers over him. So notice what's happening. Constitution, watch this. I'm going to actually get those laws changed so I've got more power. He was strong enough to do that with his charisma and with his intimidation tactics. But the rule of law, this is the term I want to make sure that you get out of this lecture. It's hugely important. What are we looking at here? Rule of law. The rule of law over man, not the rule of man over law. This is the basic Enlightenment ideal. Laws should govern men. That's the importance of a constitution. Andrew Jackson was sort of resisting the rule of law because he thought he was better than that. But the rule of law was deep-rooted enough in American political culture, United States political culture, for him to step down when the Constitution said, your term is up, it is time for an election, and he did not try to keep power as a dictator or a tyrant, right? So he stepped down. So that's it. The institution of the rule of law was strong enough. Meanwhile, in Venezuela, there was a dictator. Notice, he was the guy who, against Bolivar in Gran Colombia, said, no, I want to fragment, I want to split, I want the region of Venezuela. And so he's the father of Venezuela, this guy. And his name is Paez. And he ruled above the law. Didn't benefit his people. So that's just a textbook case of South America not having rule of law in anything more than a theory. Okay? South America, rule of law, yeah, we understand it, but we have not lived it for generations, and so it's a weak institution. Now, so who cares about all this? Unfortunately, this is the case of many South American states from this time until the 20th century and beyond, even the 21st century. Just an endless cycle of constitutions, of military coup d'etats, power grabs, There was a coup in Honduras in the past 5-6 years. The rule of law is still weak in many of these states. That's why it says coups are common to this day. Another reason for the failure of Latin America to be stable is the Catholic Church. Mexico is a textbook example. Look at that. The Catholic Church owned 50% of the productive land in Mexico. That astonished me when I read it. I didn't know this. And so the church was one of two conservative factions. The other was the military. And they both, just like the first and second estates in France in a sense, because officers in the military in France in the French Revolution also had to be aristocrats, so conservatives. Benito Juarez was an Enlightenment type. He wanted to create equality, economic and political. Yes, Robbie?
When was that true, the church? Like what time period?
We're talking late 18th century. Notice it ends this is called La Reforma, the reforms. So this is mid 19th century. And in 1876, you see that this fails. Why did it fail? Because he tried to take land from the church and redistribute it to the poor so that there was equality. After all, France had tried, England had tried, and so forth. So he was attacking the conservatives, and his reforms failed because of resistance from the church, from the generals, from the military. And it took a dictator, once again, to step in. And so this is just Mexico is a textbook case, again, of just unstable governments. That's all this is, right? So a dictator steps in, just like after the French Revolution, a dictator steps in, Napoleon, and this guy's name is Diaz, and Diaz gives privileges back to the conservatives, and there are rebellions and bandits and all of that, just instability for decades after that. Okay, that's one section. I'm getting about as far with you guys as I got with the last class, so I promised them what I'm going to have to promise you too, which is a screencast of the last bits of this. I'm going to give you this in a nutshell because I do have 2 minutes, so you're not packing. Economic dependency. This is the big idea I want you to take away. This is hugely important. Name me one strong southern regional economy. Is there one? Is India a strong industrial developed nation? Only in a few cities. It is called, is South America considered a strong, highly developed industrial? No. It's getting there, but notice it is behind. So we talk about the north-south economies, the northern economies, America, Canada, Europe, Japan. Those are advanced. But when you look at the south, around the globe, the southern regions are underdeveloped. Why? Australia is a British colony, so that's kind of an exception. It's also got 14 million people in the whole thing because it's just a long coastline. It's really like 3 Singapores. You know. But in any case, so what causes our southern states to be poor and relatively backwards compared to the northern ones? That is what we were talking about here. And no, that's as far as we can go. I'm tired. All right, so you will have about 10 minutes of blah, blah, blah with screen, or you can just bloody read.
Read. What is reading?
Oh, yeah. Probably because I don't know, have a good day. I'm just going to make a little video. Okay, I look forward to seeing you guys talk again.
Next class, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's up.
Thank you, Mr. Burrell.
Thanks, bye.